Good evening, everybody. This is Omar Serrano with the Tilted Lawyer podcast. And, I'm not really sure how to start tonight's live. I think that I need to compose myself as much as I can. I don't want to speak emotionally about some of this stuff because it's really easy to get emotional. After the good shooting in Minneapolis a couple of days ago, I went and I gave a rant about that. And I look, I recognize that there's differing opinions about the conduct of everyone. And I said a lot of things that was my opinion. And if you ask my opinion, did good try to run over an ICE agent, justifying her getting shot in the face 3 times? No. No, she didn't. If you ask others, they will have seen it different. And I've seen all of the video angles. I conclude that, hey, whatever your thoughts or opinions about the conduct of the parties involved is irrelevant to me. All I ask is that people be held accountable. Maybe this is the kind of thing that we take to juries. It's kind of the thing that the Constitution has set in place for us to decide our squabbles, our moral conundrums, or whatever. It doesn't matter what your politics are. I think that I think part of being an American is standing up against injustice wherever it's found. To some, I feel like the American spirit came from a place where there was a subgroup of people that felt that they were being oppressed, and they fought back hard against oppression, and they, in the wake of that, developed the United States of America. It became a country of immigrants. It became a country of people coming together to forge their ideas, to forge their ideologies, and we came together in such a way that everybody was supposed to be welcome, but for, obviously the human nature of it all, where, people kind of tribalized themselves. There's a rich history of police brutality in America. If you go all the way back to, you could talk about Jim Crow stuff, 1865 to the 1930s. I'm not even going to get all the way back to slavery, but the Jim Crow laws, where you had vagrancy and loitering laws that were exploited to remove people that people didn't want to have there in their towns, in their cities, in their states, and they would use that to brutalize the unwanted minority. Talk about labor suppression, political violence, and around that same time period. The explosive civil rights era, 50s and 60s. How many people were assassinated in the 60s? Obviously Martin Luther King. His holiday is coming up on Monday. Malcolm X, Bobby Kennedy. There was others on the fringe that were also fighting the good fight that lost their lives in the name of fighting for people's civil rights. We've gone through a rich, ugly history of brutality, of police brutality in America. And it has taken a lot of bloodshed to get to a place where we were. And everything about what ICE is doing right now feels like a regression. It feels like a regression in the way that it doesn't feel like ICE is fighting the good fight to rid the country of illegal immigrants. It feels like they're out hunting colored people wherever they might find them. And I don't want to be accused of speaking emotionally. I'm just kind of looking at the facts, and I'm just kind of looking at the way the cards are lining up, and I'm seeing the actions of ICE, and I'm seeing the rage and the anger of the people. And I'm not going to pretend to not know that there was a secret agenda, white nationalist agenda, regardless of whether or not you want to buy into that or not, regardless if you think I'm full of it or not, it doesn't matter. Because what I'm appealing to really with this live is not that. Look, I got my political opinions and you have yours, and they're neither here nor there. I am appealing to your American spirit for those of you that are in America. And for those of you that are not in America, just kind of fascinated at what's going on and curious about what Americans think. They're really across the board. A good friend of mine, Brad the paralegal, he's Brad the IT guy, but He was once Brad the paralegal. He is a person that voted for Trump. He would subscribe to the fact that he is a MAGA supporter or whatever you want, however you want to label that. Me and him have had debates on this show, and we've had differences of opinion. I asked him to come on today, but he was nervous about coming on today because it's a live stream. And I didn't want him to come in here and just kind of get dumped on by everybody listening in the audience, because that's what's happened in the past, and that was not my aim. But just in the 5 to 10 minutes that I was talking to him back and forth, there was one fundamental truth that me and him agreed upon, and it's just that me and him, we see two completely different worlds. I mean, I was talking about stuff in ICE, and he was asking me if I was going to ask him about the good incident. And I was like, yeah, among other things, I'm going to talk about all the shitty things that's happened recently with ICE. Of course, I'm going to talk about those things, but that's not what it's about. For me, what this is about is I want the ICE officials, if they're going to act as law enforcement, I want them to be held to the same standard as professional law enforcement individuals. The same standard as the FBI, same standards as your local CHP, your state police, your federal police, whatever. If they do stuff that's wrong, there's like an internal affairs investigation. They get disciplined inside. They get disciplined outside. If they kill somebody, they're put on trial for murder. They're not given blanket immunity to do whatever it is. There is some leeway given because they work a dangerous job. And if their life is truly in danger, then they're given immunity to do certain things. But if they misjudge the context of a situation and act counter to what would be reasonable, then they're held to account. And think of whatever famous case you want to talk about, Rodney King, if you want to talk about George Floyd, if you want to talk about just recently, the most recent incidents with ICE. The deal in America has always been, look, do whatever you want. You're free to do whatever you want. You're free to protest, but you were going to be held accountable for your actions, and that would go for both sides. And we've seen that. We've seen law enforcement be prosecuted. We've seen them let off the hook. But there has always been civil unrest where law enforcement has overstepped their bounds. And I cannot recall in my lifetime, I mean, I'm talking all the way back to 1991, LA riots, Rodney King, when they acquitted the police that brutalized Rodney, and Los Angeles literally exploded and was on fire for a couple of days. People getting pulled out of their cars because they were so angry, and all the looting in the stores that were going on. Now, we're not seeing that, but the level, and what I think what's most moving to me is I'm not just seeing liberals that are upset about what's going on. It's not just the blue folks. I'm seeing MAGA folks that are frustrated and appalled at the conduct of some of these ICE officials and what they're doing. Now, look, ICE, I read today, has a greater budget than some armies in the world. They are the most funded law enforcement agency in the world, certainly in America. And they are hiring anybody and everybody that wants to participate. And I question the level of training that they're receiving. I question internally what the message is with them. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I wanted to share with you guys an article, really. Let me get this up on the screen because I think that this is telling. Now, look, this is not a blanket. I'm not trying to speak blanketly against all ICE officials because I recognize there's good and bad in everything. But there is a slew of ICE backlash that is making people that are working for ICE right now nervous. And let me share with you this article, and we're going to read it together if I could find the tab. Here it is. And let me get this up on the screen. Excuse me. This is an article titled Immigration Agents Terrified of ICE Backlash After Shooting. In the wake of an ICE officer's killing of Renee Good, the Department of Homeland Security is rolling out Operation Metro Surge, flooding Minneapolis with hundreds of additional federal agents, only to realize it doesn't actually have the confidence to match the bravado, while Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem and others in the administration preen about justifying last week's shooting and trumpet their war on domestic terrorism. DHS is privately divided and hesitant about the latest deployments. According to documents leaked to me, not only is the department seeking volunteers for the apparently unpopular mission, it is urging its agents to maintain a low profile and comply with the use of force policies. They had to release this memo, and it says, hey, be mindful of OPSEC and officer safety. Do not wear your uniform or any piece of your uniform when entering or exiting your hotel. Do not display any Border Patrol or law enforcement insignia on your belongings. Do not divulge meetings, staging, operation location. Do not divulge anything related to operations. Be mindful of what you post on social media. Turn off your location settings and set to private. Always employ situational awareness. And then he goes on to say sectors need to detail personnel to NAT Ops, DHS, CBP, national operations, and select at-large and appropriate city. For this operation, all regular hours and overtime worked must be coded with ZYR3. On Friday, DHS sought volunteers to deploy to Minneapolis in part due to opposition within the ranks, according to Border Patrol agents and other Homeland Security workers who have reached out to me. Please begin canvassing your personnel for volunteers. The memo outlines a request for 300 additional personnel, 200 Border Patrol agents, and 100 processing coordinators to be funneled into Operation Metro Surge by Sunday, January 11th. I think the bottom line is that there's a lot of law enforcement folks out there that have spoken out against what they saw in the Good shooting, the Renee Good shooting, and the way that that officer handled themselves. And on the one hand, you got the Department of Homeland Security, you got the DOJ, you got Trump, and everybody talking real big, oh, he's a hero. And that lady tried to run him over. And, you know, we're just combating domestic terrorism or whatever. And it's emboldening some of these ICE agents, but at the same time, it's scaring the shit out of some of these other ICE agents that are kind of recognizing, hey, maybe now is not the time to be incendiary. Maybe now is time to lower the temperature. If they're having to get volunteers to help them do whatever it is they're planning on doing, that's pretty telling, isn't it? I'll continue. A Border Patrol agent familiar with the discussion said the volunteer push reflects real unease in the ranks about the Good shooting in Minneapolis and the related surge. We do have personnel, but some just don't want to go. There might be some immature knuckleheads who think they're out there trying to capture Nicolas Maduro, but most field officers see a clear need for de-escalation. No shit. A high-level career official at Homeland Security headquarters in Washington also told me there is genuine fear that indeed ICE's heavy-handedness and the rhetoric from Washington is more creating a condition where the officers' lives are in danger rather than the other way around. And if I had spent my career working for ICE back when it wasn't being labeled as the American Gestapo, and I was genuinely trying to, promote the laws of DHS and, be a good American and follow the Constitution and all those things, I would be pissed at some of the rhetoric coming out of Washington and some of the actions by some of these newer folks, or I guess immature knuckleheads who think they're trying to capture Nicolas Maduro, because they're putting lives in danger. Civilians, ICE officials, and the like. There's nothing to be gained in further escalation of all of this stuff that's going on. So the instinct to de-escalate seems to be the correct one. The article continues, within hours of the shooting, Nome held a press conference declaring Renee Good had carried out an act of domestic terrorism. Now, look, in my YouTube post earlier, and to be honest with you, I've heard that Renee Good she was protesting and she was impeding ICE investigations. And then I've heard that she wasn't a protester at all. She literally had just picked up her daughter from school and she was trying to make it on her way home or whatever. I've heard so much stuff. I've heard people say that she was being instructed to get out of the car while somebody else was telling her to drive off, and she did drive off. Her wheels were clearly turned away from the ICE officers that were clawing at her door. And the ICE, look, I don't care what you guys say, or whoever wants to tell me that she tried to run over ICE officer. It's pretty clear in the videos and all the angles that I saw, her wheels being turned to the right. She was making a right turn. away from everybody, just trying to drive away, either trying to get away from people that were trying to pull her out of the car and take her to God knows where and do Lord knows what to her. But the guy that shot her in the face, which, by the way, I heard they started a GoFundMe for that guy and raised a substantial amount of money, because there is a subset of America that supports this kind of stuff. To them, it's like, hell yeah. Carry on. This is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we voted for. It's getting harder and harder to find those people. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that Brad had said to me before I went live a few hours ago, I think he's probably frustrated. He says that he's been called names. He's been called a bootlicker. He's been called all kinds of nasty stuff in his conversations over this. And one of the reasons why he said that ICE needs to conduct themselves this way, he brought up Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, bro. And he pulled out an article from like 2020. I'm like, that really hasn't been a thing since about 2020. He said people were seizing buildings and that this kind of conduct was, I guess, necessary. And then I kind of playfully asked the question, what buildings did ICE have to take back over because they've been seized by, I don't know, illegal immigrants? What are we doing? They're very much back with that mindset. Black Lives Matter, leftists are domestic terrorists, and open borders, and we need to protect everybody from illegal immigrants or whatever. Never mind the track record of Obama having deported more illegal immigrants than I think pretty much any other president before him or after him, for that matter, quite frankly. I'm really skeptical that the objectives of ICE are to get rid of illegal immigrants, because they haven't been targeting illegals as far as I can tell. Some of them have, but there's only so many. Most of the people that have gotten hurt from ICE are American citizens, people that are here legally. They could be you. They could be your mom. They could be your grandmother. There was two guys here, like on work permits and they had green cards, and they were literally mowing a lawn, working, hardworking people just here making a living. And they were basically trying to kidnap these two Mexicans who were just out there trying to make a living. And then the people outside of the neighborhood just kind of confronts ICE, and they like really just put them on the spotlight and say, hey, what are you doing? And then to the point where ICE just kind of let them go. That's the kind of stuff that I'm doing. They're hunting Home Depots. Basically, they're hunting for Mexicans. Let's be real. That's what they're doing. And if it's not that, it's people of color. And what's more frightening is that more often than not, I'm finding that these ICE law enforcement officers, if that's what you want to call them, are often undertrained, have pretty much next to no experience in this body of law enforcement, or any law enforcement for that matter. And if they're really out there looking for volunteers, what kind of people do you think are going to openly volunteer? And I interpret volunteer to mean work without pay. What kind of people do you think are going to be volunteering to sign up and put on an ICE uniform and go hunting for illegals? Let's take a wild guess at that one. This memo comes on, but I thought that it was some of this stuff is these memos that were released internally with ICE are really telling. There's one that says the use of force. Use of force is a seizure of a person. They had to define it for them. If an officer applies force to a subject, or the subject yields to the officers or offer agents show of force, as a seizure, the Fourth Amendment requires that use of force is reasonable, necessary to carry out law enforcement duty, reasonable amount of force in light of the totality of the circumstances. Is there an imminent threat to safety? What's the severity of the crime? Are they actively resisting or evading? Tense, uncertain, rapid evolving circumstances, foreseeable risk of injury. All the law enforcement people that I have seen interviewed, I have yet to see one that have stated that when somebody drives away in the manner that Renee Good drove away in that video that all of you have seen, I'm sure from every conceivable angle, the move is not to immediately draw your firearm and start shooting. This was not a high-speed chase. where she was putting people in danger because she's traveling down the highway at 100 miles an hour. The context of the situation matters. And look, I'm not going to debate what you guys think of that, because some of you guys are hell bent on telling me that she was in the wrong, and a good number of you think in the opposite direction. They had to be reminded of 18 U.S.C. 111. Passive resistance alone is not conduct under 18 U.S.C. 111. Examples: non-compliance, refusal to cooperate with officers' commands, disobeying commands without fighting back, taking photographs or videotaping an officer or operation in public. Those are the kinds of things that you're not allowed to use force for. It's the law. They say protected act. What is protected? What is protected speech? They have to give them a primer on First Amendment policies. First Amendment protects freedom of religion, speech, press, right to assemble, and to petition the government. What are protected activities? Speech or expression. You can literally tell a cop or an officer or an ICE agent to fuck off. Get out of my town. You can call them names. You can be rude to them. Nonverbal communications. You can flip them off. Photos, recordings, they're allowed to be recorded on cell phones, 100%. They're allowed to take your picture. They're allowed to live stream your investigation as you're conducting it. They are allowed to be non-compliant. They don't have to answer your questions. They don't have to be directed anywhere unless you're detaining them for a validly legal reason. They're allowed to peacefully protest. They're allowed to march. They're allowed to rally. And part of peaceful protest and marching and rallies is showing up in abundance in a crowd of people, causing a disturbance, because that's generally what protests are. They disturb the area to get the attention of the general public observing, and possibly the media, possibly the news. You are allowed to peacefully protest as long as you're not harming anybody. That is your First Amendment protected rights. They have no authority to forcefully shoot tear gas at you, paintballs, bullets, non-projectiles, or projectiles for that matter. They don't get to take you and beat the shit out of you because you were peacefully protesting, or in your estimation, you're disagreeing with the way that they're conducting business. That is not grounds to take somebody, pull them out of the car, and beat the shit out of them, or for that matter, shoot them in the face. Leaflets, signs, picketing. What's not protected? Incitement. Sure. If you were telling people to go commit acts of violence against ICE agents, that is not protected speech. Agreed. Fighting words, actively telling somebody that you're going to kill them or harm them or do them harm, would be an example of that. That's not protected speech. That's fair game. If somebody's doing that, so that's the same as incitement, you can arrest them. Incites imminent violence or lawlessness. This is, I think, the one where people have trouble with. If you're encouraging people to join in a protest, that is not inherently inciting imminent violence or lawlessness. If you're encouraging people to protest with you, stand arm in arm, a peaceful protest. Think back to the 60s when people were sitting in the middle of the freeways, and people were, the cops were sicking dogs on them, turning fire hydrants on them, turning fire hoses on them. They were peacefully protesting. That's part of why the laws are the way they are right now, is because what do we do about peaceful protesters? They're just sitting here. Do they have the right to do that? The answer was emphatically, under the Civil Rights Act and in subsequent civil rights cases, yes, they can do that. Threats of imminent violence against an officer, obviously, we've talked about that. What is not a violation? Profanity, personal insults directed at officers, rude gestures, arguing with officers, challenging officers' authority, talking back to officers during police contact. Look, if you're going to take that job, then that's the kind of stuff that's going to happen to you. It is. Law enforcement deals with that kind of stuff every single day. And more people, because of YouTube, are becoming more educated with what they're allowed to get away with when it comes to police investigations. They don't have to answer your questions. They're allowed to disagree with officers. They're allowed to challenge officers' authority, ask for a sergeant, ask for somebody else, say, you can't do this, you can't do that. They're allowed to call you names. They're allowed to call you by your mama. They're allowed to talk back to you. They're allowed to yell at you. They're allowed to do all of these things. They can't put their hands on you. They can't tell you they're going to harm you. They can't incite violence. They can't cause you imminent harm. All of those things. That's the standard. All I want with this ICE stuff, I don't care if you're on the red aisle. I don't care if you're on the blue aisle. I don't care what your political affiliations are. I just want ICE agents to be held to the same standard that Americans have traditionally and historically fought to hold law enforcement to. Treat people fairly, respect their constitutional rights, and arrest people if they're committing a crime. And most of the time, you cannot tell if somebody committed a crime without giving them due process. The problem with ICE is they're coming at these people without badges, they're masked, and they're being told to hide their identity. You can't, and normally when you get stopped by normal law enforcement, they got a badge, they got a badge number. You could ask them their name because they need to know who you are. If they need to file a complaint against you, they know exactly who they're talking to. These masked ICE agents have no identity unless you take off their mask and force them to wear a badge and force them to have their name or something to identify them by so that we can keep track. Most of these videos, you can't tell Jim from Paul over there, Esther from Mary, or whatever name you want to think of. You can't tell who they are. How could you possibly impose constitutional protections or raise the question of whether or not they're violating your constitutional protections if you can't even identify who they are, at least enough to know their face? And if they're going to conduct ICE business, look, I've been a lawyer now for 11 years. It wasn't until Trump's second administration that I've ever found ICE agents actively have to conceal their identity. And it makes you question their motives. How could you not? Look, anybody who walks up to you with a mask on the street, that's not law enforcement, that's not wearing a badge, you're going to question them. You're going to look at them sideways. You're going to be suspicious of them. If they are wearing a badge and they have a mask on, you're going to question them. You're going to be suspicious of their motives. You're going to automatically assume that they're there to do you harm. And why wouldn't you? Look, if you want to know what the temperature is in America, I want to share some videos with you. Guys, I have no idea what's going on in the chat. I'm kind of going on my rants and I apologize. Redondo, thank you for being a member for 13 months. She says, why put ICE back on duty soon after acts with PTSD? Yeah, generally normally there's like a leave of absence, isn't there? Let me get into some of this stuff before I forget, because I only got so much time. Oh, gosh, I'm already 30 minutes in. That's crazy. How do I share my screen again? Like this. Let me take that one off. Let's get to some of, if you want to know the temperature of what is going on in America, let's just listen to some of the people. Let me share this with you.
Won't no ICE agent ever run up on me. I guarantee you they won't. I put a hole in their chest the size of a window. Safe line repair, safe line replace. That's what's going to happen. They touch me. Unarmed woman was killed by ICE. If you think you're about to come and brutalize the people while we're standing here, fuck around and find out. Our interactions with the police and ICE, and we hold them accountable. We patrol the community and we hold them accountable. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, we're the same Panther Party from back in the day.
I'm so glad he mentioned the Black Panther Party. Back in the 50s and 60s, the whole reason why the Black Panther Party and other militant organizations existed, the Nation of Islam, the Brown Berets, all of these militant organizations, was in direct response to law enforcement brutalizing communities, and specifically what was perceived to be at the time the brutalization of specific minorities. Brown folks, black folks, Asian folks for a time, in the 40s and 50s, putting them in internment camps. It was in direct response to that. And I believe that this gentleman right here that you see, that's straight out of the 60s. I don't think that's 2025. But that's the reason when you brutalize people, when you brutalize them in such a fashion that a reasonable person thinks that they are in danger by law enforcement, what are they to do but to exercise their right to form militias? Now, this guy, I just have to assume he's walking around with an AK-47, it looks like, some kind of an assault rifle. I'm just going to assume that he's in an open carry state. And so now you have a militant organization reforming, basically shouting threats to ICE, saying, hey, don't come in our cities and brutalize us, because next time we're going to fight back. You literally shot an unarmed woman in the face. You're not going to do that to us. What do you do with that? That's not keeping America safe. That's making it much, much. People's life. Look, I did a whole live stream back in, I want to say, it was before Trump got elected, and I forgot what I was talking about. I'm sure it has something to do with immigration. But one of the things that I stated was with Trump's rhetoric and some of the rhetoric that was coming out from his administration, not even talking about ICE, like if it keeps on going on that way, people are going to die. I said that like a year ago. And people are dying. And you know what? You got groups like this coming out there with this level of rage where their anger is literally boiling into rage that is no longer under the surface. They're literally walking around banding together and saying, hey, we're going to defend ourselves. Get the fuck out of our town. What do you think is going to happen? There's two ways to go. You can either de-escalate or you can send tanks in there and just declare war on the state of Minneapolis. There's state officials in surrounding cities and states over there in Minneapolis literally declaring, look, if ICE wants to come into my town and cause problems, they are going to face consequences. We will prosecute them. We will prosecute them and they will have no immunity because they have no immunity from state-born complaints, which is true. And so you have legislatures, you have senators, you have governors of surrounding states talking openly about how they are going to start prosecuting some of these ICE bad actors. That's obviously not this guy trying to resurrect the Black Panthers. I'm just saying, it doesn't really I don't know where we're going with this, but it's not going to take much to set these people off. Let's continue with this video. I just want you to get a sense for the anger.
But we're a little more aggressive now, you dig? Carry bigger guns and we don't take no shit. Places where there are a lot of immigrants at, I think that the community around them needs to take special care to them and needs to start escorting them to and from everywhere to make sure that they're safe. Because them ICE agents ain't gonna act like that if it's a bunch of people standing outside with assault rifles and shotguns. It's a semi-automatic shotgun. That means them shotgun shells that shoot out of a pump, they shoot them rapidly. If you are gonna legally arm yourself with something bigger than what they got. Those who serve in the public, they should be fearful of the public. They should be fearful that the public is going to be dissatisfied with their job that they're doing, not feeling like they're tyrants, not feeling like they're bullies because they got guns and body armor and walkie-talkies. That makes them immune to whatever the people would do. I think you want to correct the ideology of the pig and the mentality of the slave catcher. You meet them with equal force. All power to the motherfucking people. No power to the pig. Won't know.
They're literally resurrecting militant ideologies from the 50s and 60s, early 70s. And you don't get this kind of ideology without extreme violence against the people that people perceive as unfair. That's just one guy. He's like, oh, that's just one guy, whatever. He's a person of color. There's some of you would probably say, oh, they're prone to that. Well, look, there's MAGA folks out there. There's other folks that are not of color. And look, they're just angry because they're Americans and they feel that their civil liberties are being impeded on. Look, part of the beautiful thing that I've always thought about being an American is that we stand together and we unify when we feel like we're being oppressed. That's one of the best things that Americans do. And I almost honestly got kind of emotional, like listening to some of these people. They have no racist agenda. They have no political agendas. They're standing up for people that they feel are being oppressed. And that is what I've always understood the American way to be. That's what I have always understood what it means to be an American. And to hear this guy talk like this and just band together, he comes out and says, look, I've never protested before, man, but this is bullshit. I'm sitting here comfortable in my house, with my slippers on and my glass of bourbon and people over here getting shot in the face. This is bullshit. He's pulling together for fellow Americans. And it warms my heart to see this and it makes me sad at the same time. But I want you guys, look, this is the temperature of America right now. This is where we're at with this stuff. Let me make sure I pull up the right one. I think it's this one. Yes, the one that says to status. I'm going to gamble. Is the right one up? Yes. All right. This guy. I love this guy.
This is nuts. This is fucking, yeah, and you're right in the middle of this shit. What the fuck is going on? Dude, this is insane.
Have you ever gone out to these sort of things before?
Never. I've never protested in my life. My brother's here. He does it all the time. I've never. Like I said, I'm far enough away, but close enough. And I'm sitting in my cushy house and look at shit and get mad. And they're just trying to fucking scare people. And, but why shoot people? You know what really pisses me off is the fact that they detain people, cuff them, and then still beat the shit out of them. They tell you it's immigrants, only immigrants. It's fucking anybody. I have friends that got detained and all they were doing was fucking driving home from work. What the fuck?
Sounds like you don't fit the definition of the.
No, and I'm not fucking paid to be here like everybody fucking says. What the fuck is that? I gotta work in the goddamn morning, just like everybody else. I'm just here trying to stand up for community, dude. We're all human beings here. I don't give a shit who you are, where you came from, what color you are. It doesn't fucking matter. This is wrong.
I gotta tell you, man, it's so weird to hear that kind of language coming out of that guy. Like it's heartening because this is how Americans unify themselves. We stand up against oppression, and at the same time, it's heartbreaking, But he has no political agenda. He's not there for racist purposes. Look, and he's absolutely right. They're kidnapping folks. Like they take them to these detention centers. You never hear from them again. There's been people murdered in those facilities. There's people that they can't account for. They literally disappeared them. No due process, no hearings, no access to attorneys, no legal recourse to get out of whatever situation they were stopping. They're not just stopping illegals. Here's the thing. Some of you are completely blind. I literally heard somebody say today on another podcast that 99.78% of what Trump says is factual, is true. And, there's, I guess, 0.22% bullshit. There's some of you that are going to think like that and whatever. You're already lost. And I have no patience for intellectual dishonesty. When you tell me that you're going after illegal immigrants, and then it seems to me that the majority of folks being affected by these ICE investigations tend to be legal immigrants and American citizens, pastors, mothers, grandmothers, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, children. The cognitive dissonance is not going to go unnoticed. And it's going to cause a lot of anger and anxiety. There's anxiety, there's rage, there's anger in that guy's voice. And, I have this weird reaction to it because on the one hand, like, I don't know what that guy's political affiliation is, but he is there 100%. Just, I feel like on American, his what he perceives to be his American duty to be out there and stand up for folks and to stand up for the Constitution, the way that it was written, the way that it was imagined 300 years ago. And he's got to go to work in the morning, and he's never done this before, but he is compelled to get out there and stand with the people upon threat of getting shot in the face. Do you think that guy's a domestic terrorist? Is he a domestic terrorist because he's raising these issues with ICE? Because he's raising his disgruntledness with the way ICE is conducting themselves, like the American Gestapo? Do we call him a domestic terrorist? Would Kristi Noem call him a domestic terrorist? Would Donald Trump disregard him or dismiss him or flip him the bird or call him a domestic terrorist, that pedophile rapist sitting there in the Oval Office right now? Hey, there's a lot of emotions flying around. It's hard for me to contain all of mine. I don't want to turn this political. I'm just trying to appeal to the American spirit, because what's going on with ICE, whether you think they're right or wrong, whether you think their objectives are right or wrong, their conduct is 100% not up to par. At the very least, you got to agree that it's not up to par. And there are mistakes being made. There are people that are not qualified to be doing what they're doing. They're not properly trained. They're not properly vetted. And some of them are flat out members of the white nationalistic society. I just learned that the founder of the Proud Boys white nationalistic organization is a member of ICE. What does that tell you? It might not be the entire 100% agenda of every single ICE official to hunt after people of color, but it is certainly the agenda of, I hope, would be a minority of ICE officials. You can't ignore what they're doing. It makes me happy to know that there are people that are objectively looking at it and showing the right level of indignation towards this kind of stuff. Let's look at some more clips, because there's more. There's more. And I got a little bit more time. I got at least 15 more minutes before we're going to talk about the Blake Lively stuff. Let's take a look at this one. I think this guy was the Army vet. No. I think this is just kind of a mashup of some of the interactions that ICE is having with the public. Now, I want you to juxtapose this mashup of ICE interactions with the general public with the directive that went out to the ICE organizations about what justifies your use of deadly force or physical force or whatever you want to call it, and what's perfectly within a civilian's right to do without you interfering or putting your hands on them. And this is what people are capturing.
What's our lesson here? What do you want us to learn?
Following federal agents.
Give me my phone back. No, you can't take my phone.
This is your warning. This is your warning.
For what?
Stop fucking following us. You are impeding operations.
So let people go to
You did
church.
not learn from what just happened?
Have you not learned from what just happened? Did he just threaten to shoot that gentleman in the face? I guess this is the aftermath. Federal agents shattered the car windows of a woman who said she needed to get to a doctor's appointment. Look, man, maybe if people don't want to talk to you, if they're not under investigation, you have no reasonable cause to detain them. Don't be shattering windows trying to pull people out of the car to beat the shit out of them. Some lady trying to get to her hysterectomy appointment or her, I don't know why I said hysterectomy, whatever doctor's appointment. You're shattering windows. I wonder if insurance is going to cover that, or if they're going to say that, oh no, you obviously did something to deserve it. And so that seems to be your own fault. And so she's probably going to have to foot the bill for a $6,000 passenger window repair. This lady, agents dragged her from the car and carried her through the street. Oh, they're just doing still image. Yeah, they're dragging her. Federal agents shoved Minneapolis City Council president.
I don't post.
Who's that they shoved? I apologize for. A federal agent shoved Minneapolis City Council President Elliot Payne while he was acting as an observer. You clearly see him standing there. He's a city council president. I sincerely doubt that he's inseminating violence, inciting violence, or doing any of the things that would justify somebody putting his hands on him. He's an elected official, presumably, and this is what happens to him 4 days ago.
I don't post.
Sprays her in the
5
face.
ICE officers approached me.
Keep in mind the directives that we just read not even 20 minutes ago. This lady's standing here. She's protesting. Again, we don't get the full context, but just understand. She's standing there. She appears to be recording. She's probably talking shit to this, whatever the fuck this is, and she gets sprayed in the face with pepper spray.
I don't post.
She says, I don't. Oh, I just screwed it up. She says, I don't pose a threat. Gets sprayed in the face.
I don't post.
5 ICE
This guy, I think, was a pastor.
officers approached my vehicle,
Oh, this wasn't a
boxed
pastor.
me in with their vehicles, and all 5 of them forcibly removed me from my car, threw me to the ground, which is where I got some of the road rash on my face. And I was detained at the Whipple Detention Center for approximately 10 hours yesterday.
There's nothing about that guy that spells illegal immigrant to me. I don't know what that guy's ethnicity is. Honestly, he might be from Spain. Maybe he's got a little bit of Spanish in him. I don't know. But that just doesn't seem necessary. This is the guy that they're throwing into an ICE detention center. I've been to these ICE detention centers. Do you want to know what they're like? I'll tell you what they're like. The one that I've been to the most is in Adelanto, California. If you've never been to Adelanto, California, there's literally no reason to go there whatsoever. There's nothing out there. It's literally a barren desert for the most part. They got like a minor league, like a low A ball baseball field out there. But they have the ICE detention center, and I've been inside there. I've visited people that are in there. It's literally the equivalent to like a state prison facility. 100%. It's basically jail. That's what it is. The prison, it's built like a prison. They treat people like prisoners. So if you're like a 12-year-old or like a 19-year-old kid that's being held because they don't believe that you're here on a student visa or whatever, they're throwing you in jail until you have the opportunity to get in front of an immigration judge, which might not be for like a couple of months. And if you have no family, no recourse, you're here legally, but you can't prove it or at least make your case to a judge, you're going to sit your ass in what's basically amounts to state prison until they can properly vet you. And they're not going to be in any rush. I promise you they will not.
hours yesterday.
I came across an ICE agent. They were turning onto a major highway, and as they were turning, I had a walk signal on and started crossing the street. And when I wasn't moving as quickly as they would like, both the driver and passenger jumped out of the car, and they pulled weapons on us while they were driving, I might add. Not even pulled over, and fired rubber bullets.
That's insane. To be fired at with rubber bullets in that scenario, that's the kind of stuff that's going on. I'm going to play a couple more of these and then probably wrap up this portion of the show. What do we got here? I forgot what this one is. Let me restart this. I think this is the Army vet. Now, look, this guy has his gun drawn, and I know that there's a segment of you out there that are going to say, "Well, they're surrounding his car, and they're yelling at him, and that's a very scary situation. They genuinely and reasonably believe that their lives are in danger." Yeah, maybe, but they're also peacefully protesting. You could argue, and look, you could be on both sides of the aisle. I don't give a shit about that. You could disagree with me, and I'm not going to be mad at you for disagreeing. I will entertain your arguments. Look, I don't know everything in the world, man. I'm wrong on certain things. I've changed my opinion on things because I found out that I was wrong on stuff. However you want to interpret what is going on here, however you want to do, it's really it's not about that. It's the fact that the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, this Trump administration has emboldened ICE agents and incited the public against these ICE agents to the point where maybe their lives are in danger. If I was an ICE agent, I'd probably be scared shitless. If I was sitting in that car, I don't know if I'd draw my weapon on anybody. If they're just standing there yelling at me, I mean, that's kind of what happens. But this guy has his gun drawn, and you just got, look, they got their mask on. They're trying to conceal their identity. That's the troublesome part of this, isn't it? You're supposed to be able to trust law enforcement. I don't trust anybody wearing a mask. Unless it's like negative 20 degrees and I'm outdoors somewhere or something. Or I'm legit skiing and there's other people wearing legitimate ski masks. Are you going to shoot me? Yeah, all of that is legal. They let him go. They're yelling at them. They're yelling mean things at them. Get the fuck out of here, whatever. All of that is your First Amendment protected speech, and then they fled. That's what happened. But that's the kind of stuff that they're walking into it. Here's another example. I just scroll down to the bottom. What is this about? All right. Let us review the ICE mandate about what constitutes reasonable use of force. If somebody is peacefully protesting, if they're not inciting violence, if they're videoing you, if they are photographing you, and otherwise standing there peacefully, they are not a domestic terrorist, and you're not allowed to put your hands on them. Let's see how this guy did. Yep. I think he failed. I think that's a fail.
What you just saw was a federal immigration agent pushing an unidentified protester into oncoming traffic.
And people are going to say, oh, well, CNN is broadcasting it. Fuck off. It's not about that right now. It's on camera, dude. It's on camera. Look, there's plenty of, I could pull up hundreds of examples of unnecessary ICE escalation where they are literally putting their hands on folks, beating the shit out of people. Just a couple of days ago, they shot somebody in the face. A couple of days after that, just miles away from the George Floyd incident, somebody else got shot. Look, I don't know what needs to change, but something's got to change. I mean, actually, I do know what needs to change. We need to have clear directives about what ICE is doing. The way that they're going about protecting the borders, protecting our open borders, protecting America from these illegal immigrants. Maybe they should actually go after illegal immigrants. Maybe there's a better vetting process that exists where we can actually isolate illegal immigrants who are criminals and go after them and deport them. I know that we've done that before. We've done it very successfully. Whether or not you like or disapprove of Barack Obama, he was pretty freaking successful at deporting folks, deporting illegals. He had this funny thing, and he decided to actually prioritize the deportation of criminals, illegal immigrants that were committing crimes. And he actually made them a priority. If you're illegal, maybe you'll get a pass, but what we're really looking for is people that are here illegally and are committing crimes. What kind of crimes? I don't know, misdemeanors, DUI, shoplifting, those kinds of things, all the way up to, worst of the worst, child molesters, murderers. Those were automatic deportations. And you know what? He got labeled the deportation president because of the enormous number of people that got deported. I remember being a young immigration attorney way back in the day, back prior to 2016. And I would tell this, I would have to tell some of my class, I don't know what to tell you. Look, you were convicted of a felony 8 years ago. I know you've been a good person, but they're going to kick you out. There's nothing I could do about it. And some of you would applaud that. Some of you wouldn't applaud that, but that was the policy. And we didn't have to create the American Gestapo to get it done. If your political agenda, if it is your viewpoint that we want to kick out all the illegals, great. Maybe the way to go about it is to not recreate 1930s Germany and piss off good Americans, former vets, law enforcement officials, piss off genuine Americans that are here just trying to stand up for those that are being oppressed. Maybe we shouldn't be inciting those people to violence. We're literally recreating look, the 1960s was by far and away the most explosive decade in modern American history. And the reason why it was so explosive was because everything came to a head. We were getting rid of integration, or while we were implementing integration, we were bringing together the Black students and the white students and the students of color into the same schools. We were forcing them to integrate themselves. There was a lot of pushback. There was still the instances of Jim Crow laws. There was so much pushback. People were getting assassinated. People were getting brutalized in the streets. There were these militant groups that were rising up to protect the rights of the people. And that's why the 60s is a earmark of history of how explosive things can get. And I can promise you, if things do not change, if there's not some measure of de-escalation, if the Trump administration and the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security wants to continue down this path of emboldening ICE to commit acts of violence against innocent folks, then history tells us where that's going. That's it. Folks, I love you all. I got another live stream that I'm going to start in about 4 minutes or so. I needed to get off my rants about what's going on with ICE. I love you all. I hope for those of you that stay to watch the entire 52-minute live stream that I haven't offended anybody. Listen, I'm not going to pull any punches. I didn't vote for Trump. I would never vote for Trump. I don't approve of his administration. But for those of you that did vote for Trump, I do not consider you my enemy. I really hope that you do not consider me your enemy. And you know what? Every single time I do a political stream like this, I lose subscribers. And if you want to unsubscribe from my channel because I've said mean things about Donald Trump or this administration or whatever, then hey, I wish you well, but I got no time for intellectual dishonesty. I welcome all opposing viewpoints. I will literally have you on my show to argue with me about whatever it is you want to argue about. I'm not here to argue politics with you. I'm just here to stand up for Americans. I'm here to stand up for the American spirit. I'm here to stand up for what I thought was the American way. I'm not buying into this new America that is openly going after folks the way that they have. And that's all I got to say about it. I love you all. I will see you guys in about 6 minutes. Well, I guess about 3 minutes now. I'm going to do this live stream. If you want, you're going to be redirected to that live stream from here. I'll see you there. And if not, I love you all. Have a wonderful night. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.